Sudan's current civil war is rooted in the fragile aftermath of Omar al-Bashir's ousting in 2019. The fall of Fasher, who had ruled for 3 decades, was a moment of hope for millions. People poured into the streets, demanding freedom, justice, and a new beginning. But beneath the celebrations, the country's deep divisions and unresolved tensions remained. The revolution promised democracy, but power quickly shifted to a shaky alliance between civilian groups and the entrenched military. This uneasy partnership was meant to guide Sudan toward elections, but trust was scarce. Civilian leaders struggled to assert authority, while the military clung to its influence, wary of losing control. Tensions exploded after a 2021 military coup, led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and his deputy, General Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, Hemedti, who sidelined civilians and consolidated military rule. The coup shattered hopes for a peaceful transition, and the military's grip on power tightened. Beneath their alliance, a rivalry simmered over the fate of Hemedti's Rapid Support Forces, RSF, a powerful paramilitary with deep economic interests. The RSF, originally formed from the notorious vied militias, had grown into a force with its own agenda and resources. Integrating the RSF into the regular army threatened Hemedti's autonomy and wealth, while Burhan saw the RSF as a direct challenge to state authority. Both men maneuvered for advantage, fueling suspicion and deepening the divide between their forces. Failed negotiations led both sides to mobilize, turning Khartoum into a powder keg by early 2023. The city's residents lived in fear as armed groups took positions, and the threat of violence loomed over daily life. On April 15, 2023, open conflict erupted, plunging Sudan into a catastrophic civil war. The fighting quickly spread, devastating neighborhoods and forcing thousands to flee their homes. The ambitions of 2 generals ignited a national tragedy, shattering hopes for peace. As the conflict raged on, ordinary Sudanese paid the highest price, their dreams for a better future lost amid the ruins of war. The war in Sudan is not just a battle of bullets and bombs. It is a ruthless contest for absolute control between 2 powerful men. On one side stands General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the face of Sudan's traditional military establishment, a man shaped by decades of service and loyalty to the state. Opposing him is General Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo, better known as Hemedti, a self-made warlord who rose from humble beginnings to command the feared Rapid Support Forces, or RSF. Hemedti's charisma and ruthless ambition have earned him fierce loyalty among his fighters. Burhan, a career soldier, views the RSF as a dangerous rogue militia, one that undermines the very fabric of Sudan's state order and threatens the unity of the armed forces. Hemedti, who began as a camel trader and later led the notorious Janjaweed militias in Darfur, transformed the RSF into both a military juggernaut and an economic powerhouse, controlling lucrative gold mines and wielding influence far beyond the battlefield. Their uneasy alliance was always destined to fracture. Each man maneuvered behind the scenes, plotting to outlast and outwit the other, knowing that only one could ultimately hold power. The government's push to merge the RSF into the regular army became the final straw. Neither Burhan nor Hemedti would back down, each refusing to surrender their authority or ambitions. As negotiations collapsed, Sudan's cities were transformed into battlegrounds. Urban neighborhoods echoed with gunfire, and ordinary civilians found themselves trapped in a violent struggle for supremacy. In the end, it is the people of Sudan who pay the highest price. Families torn apart, lives shattered, and a nation left in ruins as 2 men fight for the throne, seemingly indifferent to the suffering of millions. Fasher, North Darfur, became the epicenter of Sudan's humanitarian nightmare. As the last government-held city in Darfur, it was besieged by the RSF for over 500 days. Refugees seeking safety found themselves trapped, cut off from food and medicine. Starvation and bombardment became daily realities, with civilians reduced to eating leaves to survive. The RSF's blockade and attacks on camps like Zamzam destroyed any semblance of sanctuary. The city's fall in October 2025 marked the end of hope for hundreds of thousands. Fasher's story is one of a city starved, bombarded, and abandoned to its tormentors. The RSF's siege of Fasher was a calculated campaign of starvation and terror, designed to break the city's spirit and force its surrender. For weeks, the city was encircled, with every road in and out tightly controlled by armed fighters. The sense of isolation grew with each passing day, as hope for relief faded. Aid convoys were blocked at checkpoints, markets were systematically destroyed, and water sources were deliberately targeted. These actions weren't random. They were part of a strategy to create famine by design, leaving civilians with nowhere to turn for food or clean water. Malnutrition soared, especially among children, as families fought for scraps, and mothers watched helplessly as their children wasted away. Humanitarian workers struggled to reach those in need, often risking their own lives to deliver what little aid they could. Escaping refugees described a city haunted by hunger and fear, with men often missing, victims of ethnic violence or forced conscription. Overcrowded camps became the only refuge, but even there, safety and food were scarce. The city's fall unleashed a wave of looting and violence, as RSF fighters claimed their spoils and civilians ran for their lives. Homes and businesses were ransacked, and the chaos left deep scars on the community. For survivors, the end of the siege brought no relief, only new horrors at the hands of their conquerors. Many were left traumatized, hiding in the ruins of their homes, uncertain if safety would ever return. The siege was not just a military tactic, but a weapon of mass suffering, leaving behind a legacy of grief, loss, and shattered lives. Fasher's ordeal stands as a chilling example of modern siege warfare, where civilians bear the brunt of conflict and survival itself becomes an act of resistance. Sudan's war has decimated its healthcare system, leaving millions without care. Over 80% of hospitals in conflict zones are destroyed or abandoned, many deliberately targeted. Outbreaks of cholera, measles, and malaria rage unchecked among displaced populations. Children face acute malnutrition, and pregnant women give birth without medical help. Doctors work under constant threat, with aid organizations forced to withdraw for safety. The collapse of healthcare is a silent killer, deepening the nation's crisis. Even if peace returns, rebuilding will take decades. Sudan's future is gravely wounded. The Saudi maternity hospital massacre marked the darkest moment of Fasher's fall. On October 28, 2025, RSF fighters stormed the last functioning hospital, executing over 460 patients and family members. Survivors recount systematic killings, with atrocities filmed and shared by the perpetrators. Medical staff were abducted or killed, erasing the city's last hope for care. Satellite images confirmed the carnage, bodies strewn across hospital grounds. The massacre is a clear war crime, violating every standard of humanitarian law. RSF promises of investigation ring hollow, given their record of impunity. The hospital's destruction is the logical extension of the RSF's brutal methods. With Fasher's capture, the RSF now dominates Darfur and much of Sudan. Their victory is built on ethnic violence, echoing the Darfur genocide of the early 2000s. The RSF, descended from the Janjaweed, targets non-Arab groups, especially the Masalit, with systematic killings and sexual violence. The US and others accuse the RSF of crimes against humanity and genocide. Villages are razed, Survivors flee, and the demographic landscape is being violently reshaped. The RSF's rise signals not just a shift in power, but the triumph of a genocidal force. The world's failure to stop the first Darfur genocide is being repeated, this time on an even larger scale. As Sudan descends into chaos, the world's response has been apathetic and inadequate. Diplomatic statements and limited sanctions have failed to halt the violence or protect civilians. Major powers are distracted, leaving Sudan's crisis to fester in the shadows. The UN's warnings echo the failures of the past, as mechanisms for intervention prove hollow. Regional actors like the UAE fuel the conflict while calling for peace. The cost of global indifference is measured in lives lost, families shattered, and futures destroyed. The world's inaction sends a dangerous message: atrocities can unfold with impunity. Sudan's tragedy is rooted in a culture of impunity. Perpetrators of past atrocities were never held accountable. Hemedti and the RSF, once Janjaweed, were legitimized instead of prosecuted, enabling new horrors. Violence has become the surest path to power, as amnesty and political deals reward war crimes. Breaking this cycle demands real justice, documenting crimes, preserving evidence, and pursuing prosecution. Without accountability, peace is impossible. Sudan's wounds will only deepen. As the nation fractures and a genocidal force consolidates power, the world's failure to act is a lasting stain. Only a genuine commitment to justice can prevent Sudan's tragedy from becoming a permanent scar on humanity.